Hello, I'm Canadian author and artist Mark Heine. Um, I made a mistake in the end of the last video. I said the coming video is video number 6. It is in fact video number 7. This is video number 7 in the Elements of Painting um, video series that I'm working on. This is the next day, so it take me a little bit of time to get my words going. I work in a alone in a studio, and I'm not used to talking, especially to myself. So it may take me a little while to get back up to speed here. Today's video is beginning with contrast, which is the next in the Elements of Painting slideshow. So let's get directly to the slideshow and get started. I'm going to do a screen share here. Desktop share. There we go. Okay, here we are. So we are well into the Elements of Painting series or list that I've created, and right now we're going to start with contrast, which is where we left off in the last video. So of course, contrast is a very important part of painting. There are a lot of people that say that painting is, without color, it is just light against dark and dark against light, and the play between dark against light. That's one of the primary elements of painting. Where are you going to put the contrast, and how much contrast are you going to put in? Certainly, when you add contrast, you create focus. So certainly, contrast in focal points can be important. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be there, but it's one of those elements that can draw the eye quite quickly, because it's dark against light is what we have to work with. So I'm going to go on here. Oops, too much audio. There we go. Okay, this is an artist I know called Jeremy Mann, who does figurative work, and he also does these cityscapes. And as you can see, contrast is a big part of this. It creates a great sense of depth, and there's a lot of reflection happening with the wet road surface, and so contrast here creates funnels basically the viewpoint, along with the single point perspective. Funnels all the view directly at the focal point, which is down here. But then there's some great secondary focal points here, and I don't know what that is over there. It doesn't really matter. And there's something up there that's interesting. So, controlling contrast is a very effective tool to work with. And here's something that I've discovered when working with figurative work. One of the things about figure painting is that when you put eyes and a face, most specifically eyes, into a painting, it becomes about a person. And that's not a good thing if you're selling figurative work. Not necessarily a good thing if you're selling figurative work in a gallery, because people are a little bit hesitant in buying a painting of somebody that they don't know. It's sort of like, who's that? That's not Uncle Joe. Why is this person on your wall, kind of thing. So a figurative painting that has anonymity, which means it could be anyone, becomes more of a figure study. When you put the face in, it becomes a portrait. And so it's something that I struggle with quite often in figure painting. If you want to sell figure painting in a gallery, which is a little bit of a task, because figurative painting is traditionally hard to sell. Having anonymity, in this case underwater, it works quite well, because the figure itself is below the surface, and the face is obscured by the reflections in the water. So underwater figurative work can be quite a nice way of avoiding that portraiture type of feel. Um, just going back a little bit to reference material in terms of being able to make up the image. If you look at, I better check the time here. Yeah. Well, if you look at the complexity in the reflection here, uh, the reflection has to echo the form of what's happening in the painting. So if you change something down here, you have to change it in the reflection as well. So if you move that arm, or you decide to add another character in, or you put a jellyfish somewhere or something like that, you're going to have to see it up here. And you have to see it in a distorted way. So you have to imagine what that distortion would look like based on the angle of the water surface that you're looking at. So it can be quite complex. That's why the better you can produce your reference material, the better chance you have to make that a convincing image. Because most of my paintings, underwater and above water, are combinations of multiple images uh, put together, and they have to all work in terms of reflections and light direction and light intensity. I mean, you can't take something that you shot on a cloudy day and put it into a scene shot on a sunny day, because the type of lighting is different, especially underwater. On a sunny day, uh, underwater, you get a lot of this broken and dappled kind of light feel. On a cloudy day, it becomes all soft, and there is none of that broken dancing light that's moving across the surface. It's a lot more simplified, but it is not usable with something that is shot in the sunlight. So something to consider. But anonymity, if you're doing a figurative painting, I tend to try and avoid putting the face in. If the face is in, it's only there taking part in a scene, as opposed to a painting. It's about painting that's what's happening, as opposed to a painting about the subject. So anonymity is something to consider. And okay, here's something that is really an important thing to consider in your work. Dark and light positive. I'm not really sure if there's another term for it. This is one of my dad's paintings, and you can see here, the stern of the ship is dark against the light background. So we have dark positive against the light background, and then of course here we've got light positive against a dark background. Up here we've got light positive against dark, light positive against dark, and up here we've got dark positive against light. So it's the same object being sometimes light positive and sometimes dark positive. It really, what it does is it puts the subject into the view, or into the canvas. It's not sitting on top. It's playing. So the canvas is the mid-tone, and the subject either comes forward or recedes. And if it can happen in the same plane, it creates a really interesting depth. And this was also something that my father used to do. He used to always, or almost always, put a secondary focal point in the foreground to create depth. And I talked about how my father's technique in terms of style of painting is loose enough that he can get away with faking things. So he plopped this pilot boat in the foreground, and he's got this kind of half-assed sort of reflection here that is not really photorealistic, but you get the point. It's a reflection of the boat itself. So it looks fairly realistic, but it's not. If you had a photograph that looked like that, the reflection would be a lot different. And you can see up back here through all this water here, this is all very stylized, really all kind of just made up. It looks like reflection. There's some vertical shapes here that echo some of the features on the boat. The mast here is reflected, and this the transom of the boat. You get this shadow reflection. So um, yeah, not, with his style, he didn't need to have accurate reference. And that's another thing that Paul Calais, the pencil artist that I referenced earlier, was good at too, is and Brian Johnson as well, indicating detail without really spelling out what it is. So you can do some indications of things and shapes and objects happening here that give an impression that it's a heavily accurately rendered piece, but it's not. They're just indications that give you the idea that there's labored detail without laboring over the detail. That's quite an effective technique. Uh, so anyway, light and dark positive, it's a great thing to play with back and forth, um, and something that certainly you can control to give yourself the effect that you like. On to the next one, we have subject obscurity. I'm not sure if there's a term for this either, but it may not look obscure to you, this painting, but at 36 by 48, when people come into a gallery and they come and look at a painting and they stand kind of like that close to it and look at it, and it's like closing your eyes and feeling an elephant, right? How do you describe it? So this painting was quite a conundrum for people to understand what the subject is, and it may still be for some people. Everyone has a different vocabulary visually, but this painting sold because it was obscure. I went for the anonymity aspect, so there in the material there was my daughter's face up here. This is Sarah, my daughter Sarah, on the swing in the fall down at Willows Beach Park. And so you can see there's a chain here. It's cold, so she's got her sleeve bundled around it, so she's not holding the cold chain. And it's one of these tire swings. It's got kind of a rubber loop that you sit in, and she's swinging on it, so you get some motion effect kind of thing. So I happen to be teaching a seminar at a gallery down in the basement of this gallery at the time this painting sold, and when it sold, the gallery worker came downstairs and she said, "Hey, we just sold that big painting of yours," and it was from a family who came in and they were looking at all these paintings in the gallery, and they came on this painting, and there was two kids, two parents, and two grandparents all looking at it. They're all looking at it going, is that? Because they're looking at it close up and not really understanding what the subject is. And so the person working in the gallery came over and said, can you see what it is? And they went, no. And she said, well, it's a girl on a swing. And the little girl in the group said, oh, I can see it. I know what it is. Can't you see that's the chain there and the seats there? And eventually everyone kind of clicked in and clicked on. It's like, whoa, yeah, I see it now. It's kind of like finding Waldo or something like that. So the family got all excited because they were on the sort of the inside loop as to what the subject was, and it was exciting enough for them, and it engaged them enough that they bought the painting. And took it back home to another city in Canada. I won't say where, but so anyway, this subject obscurity kind of thing can create a visual interest for the viewer, trying to work out what's happening in the painting, a little bit of mystery going on, and ultimately it wound up being the thing that sold the work, was the mystery of trying to solve what it was. So something to consider. Quite often it's fun to get in and really zoom in. They call it a macro type of image, where you zoom in on something, and the close-up look is really obscure, but once you understand it, you can see that it's part of a larger view, and it's kind of a game to challenge the the brain to work it out. And once you engage people and start challenging them, they become committed more emotionally to the work. So something to consider. So that's obscurity. And then I just wanted to go on to this painting here, which is the same subject. This is a long, skinny, again, it's a sample of from earlier videos, the drama of an unusual format. This is my daughter Sarah in the pool in the backyard again, and this is a snorkel, a little bit of a wave. That's her elbow. She's wearing a mask on her head. So the same kind of thing with this painting. People looked at it and went, "What the hell is that?" And really couldn't figure out what it was. And so I remembered the experience of selling that painting to the family, the previous painting, and so I sent this by email to the same family, and that was a few years later, and they bought this one as well. So it became a match set to that other painting. So again, subject obscurity is a fun thing to play with. And the next in the elements of painting, oh no, not quite. This is same kind of thing too. Oddly enough, it's another long horizontal format. I don't do many of those, so it's interesting that there's two back to back. But this painting was in a show at a gallery, and they decided to do a group show and a call, and the call was abstraction. And so I did this painting, which is abstract in terms of the reflection. There's a boat reflected in the water here, and you're looking down. You can see a little bit of sparkle of the sunlight, and then of course the kids down playing on the dock, and I think that's Sarah, shielding her eyes from the sun. So again, it's subject obscurity, comes off a little bit abstract because at first glance it can be harder, a little harder, a little challenging to recognize what is happening in the painting, but can make it a fun challenge for the viewer, and it becomes something unusual. It's something that is not spelled out for you letter for letter, so you don't have to use your brain. Challenging the viewer to engage in something is a good thing. Too much engagement and they can turn off and go, oh, well, I don't really want to put in the effort to finding out what that is. But a little bit can be fun and can challenge the viewer. So more subject obscurity. Okay, and here we have a painting about a subject that is very fond, close to my heart, tension. And when I say tension, I'm talking about when you're creating a composition, and we see it over and over again with people that are, married to their reference material, and they're not looking and not thinking and not seeing, and there may be a say for instance, it's a fishing boat with long, like a tall mast of fishing poles, and it comes up and there's a mountain in the background on the poles and exactly at the peak of the mountain. And that creates a point of tension that destroys any kind of depth of field, because the boat's in the foreground, the mountain's obviously in the distance, but because you put the two of them together and they meet, it destroys any kind of depth of field. So that's bad tension. That's quite often that is something that ruins a painting, and it's something that's easy to see if you think about it in advance. If you look at your material and go, oh my God, that's going right there, it happens to butt right up against this, I'll just move that a little bit and change that a little bit, and that's no big deal. But if you don't think about it in advance and you wind up painting that, and then you assess the work afterwards and go, oh crap, it's too late to change that now. So think about tension. Now, I was doing a mentoring class with a group, and one of the artists did exactly that. Did something that became a real point of tension with between the foreground and the background. And so I thought, well, what about trying to use tension for good instead of evil, which is certainly something that is in your toolbox. And so I did this painting specifically to create multiple points of tension. So I've got the cloud in the background just making contact with the figure. It even extends past a little bit, so that's a loose tension there. But this point here was engineered to be almost in contact with the background. This point here was certainly engineered to be almost in contact. So there's a here with this and this. Um, I was trying to create tension on purpose to create some visual interest. So using that tool of tension, which can be used to create interest, but it has to be conscious and it has to be controlled so that you're getting interest and not uh, destroying the painting. It has to be intentional. So if it is something that you can think about in the original composition stage and play on, again, these are all uh, things, elements that can be manipulated for your use or your toolbox. Uh, and if you understand how they work, you can use them to produce what it is you're trying to say. So tension, that's a good one, important one to preconceive. And then depth of field, certainly in this particular one, I've got some branches and snow-covered branches in the background. I can't really see because it's a large painting that's reduced down, but this is all fairly soft focus. This is all fairly soft focus back here. There's a little bit, maybe a little sharper here, but there's still the edges are a little bit soft. And then we've got a branch in the foreground here that is soft edge, and the idea is to put the main subject, the character, in the middle ground, uh, in between all these different um, layers and objects. So that's something to consider. Depth of field. How do you generate that depth of field? Focus, things like that. This is like my father's little um, pilot boat in front, like in that last painting. It pushes the main subject back and creates some depth of field. Um, Anything else about this painting? A lot of the painting, again, the light source is top left. There's a branch coming in here that leads right down to the focal point, and then there's secondary focal points. There's a little bit of surreal content, and then just in case you want to get off the canvas, you glide down this branch, you check out the focal point, and then you can't get away because this branch is blocking you from going off and out. So that recirculates you back into your composition. That was the intent. Whether it's working or not is subject to your point of view, but that was what I meant with this. And again, this one too has a number of different elements of the painting. Each painting, I hope, has, but it's got some surreal content. It's got the concept. This is about the pollinators and about the pollinators around the world dying off due to glyphosate or neonic pesticides that are destroying. The back label about this talks about Bolsonaro and the Brazilian government, who have approved the use of glyphosate in the or neonics in the Amazon rainforest, and they're talking about billions and billions of bees dying off, and the scientists that are monitoring this are being muzzled by the government and as they destroy the rainforest. And so anyway, pollinators, if you don't have pollinators, you don't have food. So it's becoming a very big issue. Read the back label of this painting. So again, this is all about my passion about the environment and trying to point out what's happening within the environment that we're creating. So depth of field, certainly something good to work on. Okay, now this could take a while. Where are we here, time-wise? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, whoops, hang on, pause. I'm going to pause here Let me stop sharing. This is the end of video number 7, because the environmental characteristics subject is quite a long one, and we're already, I think, into 20 minutes. So that's the end of video number 7, and we're going to be moving on to video number 8 next. Thanks for joining me. I hope you got something out of it, and hopefully I'll see you tuning in for video number 8, which is coming right up. Thanks for watching.